But believe me, the Viet Cong didn't quite do it that way. They were very brave and very dedicated, but they come to a grinding halt when they were greeted with a 5-power 5-automatic weapon, I would say. So I found, as far as the mental outlook, I just couldn't get enough of it. Absolutely. I got in the NUA for when we were doing bayonet fighting because I was smiling. I was smiling because I enjoyed it. But the instructor thought I was laughing at him. If he'd only realised, no, I couldn't get enough of it. Absolutely couldn't get enough of it.
So
yes, it was quite a thing. We would jump out of the bushes and stab her. They had called us Marung, or Marung, or in other words, Phantoms of the Jungle. Phantoms of the Jungle. And
certainly one of the negative effects of Vietnam, but do you have any positive sort of an effect from Vietnam?
Absolutely. I mean, no, I wouldn't have missed it for quids. It was a life's experience. No, I stayed in a regiment, but I was farmed out to intelligence organisations and had a reasonable career within the career on the intelligence side. They were communists. They wanted to bring about a regime which I didn't want to have a bar of. I love my country. That's it. Into it. No questions asked.
Whereabouts were you born, Paddy?
Well, I was born in Hungary, about 60 k's south west of Budapest. 1944, correction, 1940.
And what did you do after you finished school?
Oh, straight in the military. It was I guess it was a hangover from what I've just described. So what else would you like to know?
So what does Kapooka look like?
Now or then?
Well, then.
Left over from World War II. None of the nicely built huts like you even see down the regiment. Nissen huts, you know, harsh, manned by Korean veterans, World War II veterans and Korean veterans who took no garbage, and rightly so, because they weren't training you there for a picnic. Firm, it was very, very hard and harsh, but good. For me, it was good. And funny enough, in that camp, we had the same amount of suicides, hangings in the ablutions from amongst the young recruits as we had at the Northern Migrant Camp. So wherever there's a parallel to that, goodness only knows. True. You know, young kids just, I don't know what goes through the mind of a person like that. I can appreciate it. Obviously, it's the end of the road for some reason or other. But for me, I couldn't fathom where the end of the road would be for a thing which I thought was enjoyable. To me, I thought it was, and easy. You know, you were fed, you were dentally treated. I mean, I thought I was in paradise, absolute paradise. I missed the bush, but I was being promised plenty of it, and did get it.
Did you find it easier than the other blokes then because of your previous experience?
I think so, I would say. So I found, as far as the mental outlook, I just couldn't get enough of it. Absolutely. I got in the NUA for when we were doing bayonet fighting because I was smiling. I was smiling because I enjoyed it. But the instructor thought I was laughing at him. So I nearly got punched that day and everything. And if he'd only realised, I couldn't get enough of it. Absolutely couldn't get enough of it.
Well, what happened in the interval between Malaya and Vietnam for you?
Well, soldiered on for quite a while with 1RAR and then went to the reserves, but didn't really last too long in the reserves. Not last, I mean, that was by choice because I just simply rejoined. I really rejoined the full time, you know, because I wanted to go to Borneo. And I'd done my SAS Cadre before that, and so I went straight to the regiment. And we started to train with my squadron to go to Borneo and were about to relieve the squadron in situ in Borneo when the Indonesian confrontation finished, 1966, I forget the exact date, and by that time we had a squadron deployed in Vietnam already, and we just sort of did a right hook, for the want of a better word, and relieved the squadron in Vietnam. So one thing from training for Borneo overnight to just jams off and you've got a new one, and landing in Vietnam almost straight away, and landed in Vietnam something like 7th of February 67, something like that.
So how long were you at home for between the malaria emergency?
Oh, I was home for about 2.5 years or something like that. Or hang on, a bit longer perhaps. No, 2.5 years, 2.5, 3 at the very maximum, but more like 2 and a bit.
So I think you mentioned that you left the army and went into the reserves.
Yeah, that's correct.
And
that was in 63, but by 66 I was back again.
So what had happened? What sort of changes of thought or attitude had you had during that time?
The only reason I ever left was because I got married, and I thought it would be a better life for my wife. If I'd only communicated with her, I would have found out that she didn't mind at all. It was a mistake. But as soon as we found out that she didn't really mind it, I was back in. And what kind of mindset did I have out? Oh, not too bad. I'm very happy being a civilian. And the thing, when I left, I felt I'd left the job undone. I hadn't fulfilled what I signed up for.
Where did those feelings come from?
Loyalty to your mates. The minute, I mean, you don't lose your mates. So you drink booze with them. You might be a civilian. I was a civilian, but I was in the reserve, so there's a continuity, right? In actual fact, my service went full-time reserve, full-time without a break. You understand what I mean? There was no break whatsoever. It was a transfer job. And they're saying we're saddling up to go here, we're saddling up to go there, and became very hard to sort of not be a part of it. And as I say, when they were saddling up for Borneo, that was good enough for me. I wanted to be in it too.
Is that when you did your SAS Carter?
I did my SAS Carter before, and before switching to the reserves, before. In those days you had, and I assume it's still the same, you had 3-year enlistments, 6-year enlistments, right? I think I did 2 lots of 3-year enlistments, was transferred to the reserve, and then upped it to a 6-year enlistment. I'm pretty sure about that. And yeah, fairly positive about that, which occurred very early 66, considering that I left late 63, and then very early 66 I was back in the full-time system again. However, before I left, I did an SAS Carter and spent a short time at Swanbourne, but my time was up, right? When I returned, I realised that the blokes that were now surrounding me, I would be going to Vietnam with. I just had the feeling. Vietnam was very much on the horizon, and we had some blokes already gone, but mainly an advisory role, right? I'm not quite sure if the 3 Squadron was already deployed there or not, but quite a lot of the blokes had gone as advisors, right? So I walked to the adjutant and I said, I don't know these people from a bar of soap, our lives are going to depend on it. So I asked to do another Carter. I was sorry for it because they are bloody hard. They are torture. However, I'm very happy because sure as hell, they were exactly the blokes I went to Vietnam with. And by that time, we knew each other like that. So no, it was pain for I don't know how many weeks. And of course, having done one, I did well and everything. That's neither here nor there. Should have, because I had a bit of an advantage. You know what I mean? I knew the system. Although they differ from... I somehow or other noticed the second one was already more tactically geared, whereas the first one was more commando. More, the unarmed combat, roping, rappelling, canoeing, whereas the second one was already more geared to tactics and that, so because they could see you know, the combat side of it on the horizon, not only because of Borneo, but also because they could see that. So yes, I was sorry, but no, I wasn't, and it all worked out beautifully. Absolutely beautifully. Hard yakka, I'm telling you. Bloody hard yakka.
Had you returned to the army because you could see Vietnam on the horizon?
We could, definitely. I could see Vietnam on the horizon before, around the time I did the SAS Cadre, because we were even loading, what a lot of Australians don't realise, that they were a signatory to CETO, to the best of knowledge. And we were actually loading ammunition on boats to take to them, because they were already engaged in the conflict as a CETO partner. And it was our obligation. We had to help. We were a signatory to it. And so you don't start loading ammunition for a member partner, do you, without saying something's going to bloody happen. But no, I never, and I genuinely mentioned that Borneo was the thing which tickled my mind, and I guess because my mates were actually either there already or going there, and I want to be with them. So really, but of course, and I was quite happy with that, because I couldn't see Vietnam being over in 5 seconds. I couldn't see it being over. No, didn't play in my mind, nothing. I just wanted to be with my old mates. Simple as that.
Time to return to the side.
Correct way, exactly that. And whatever conflict was on the horizon or wasn't, that was yet to come. No, it's time to return to the side, time to, you know, get with the old crowd.
Did the old crowd put any pressure on you, for want of a better word, to come back and join the side?
No, yeah, there was the odd subtle thing, especially on the booze with them. Yes, of course there was. Yeah, jokes, banter, you know.
What kind of jibes did they make?
Jibes, yeah, you know, it's all right for you, you're a civilian bastard, you know. You know, meaning, you know, it was a joke, but I mean, no, it's, yeah, I wasn't quite a civilian, because the reserve site was quite full on, and I was actually in the emergency reserve, and we did, funny enough, the training was down at the regiment itself. And yes, and that was another side. I was seeing them there as well. So really, it was a bit of a surreal world. And yeah, I did rather well in Civvy Street, so I don't worry about that. Actually, had my first house built. I didn't say I owned it outright, but I didn't own too much money on it. Age 23. Not many young 23-year-olds already have their first house today. Well, I don't know. Maybe they do.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, Chris and I, we had our first house up and running age 23. So it wasn't as if I was down on the bones of my ass or anything. It's
Well, what was your family situation when you returned to the army?
Right, when
Vietnam?
I returned to the army, I was a married man, which I'd never been before, and I had either one child or two. You'd think I'd remember straight away, but I'm sorry I don't.
Just returning to the Vietnam conflict, what did you know about the conflict in Vietnam before you entered the war?
I knew quite a bit about it in my case. A lot of the blokes didn't care, but because I was an avid studier of the French situation in Vietnam, you know, and right up to Dien Bien Phu and the 54 severance of the North and the South. So when I deployed there, I deployed with about as well briefed by myself, apart from the propaganda briefs again of the enemy being smaller, can't shoot as well, not as well trained, hasn't got enough ammunition, blah, blah, blah. And I tell you what, the amount of ammunition they threw my way, forget about the rest of the crowd, I'm talking personally now, they never appeared short of ammo. Or if they did, they must have saved it up for the occasion and used it. Yeah, and they could shoot. And then, mind you, they squealed like everyone else did when they were hit, you know, but they were amazingly dedicated and focused on the job.
You were just talking about your understanding of Vietnam. Do you think that you got briefed effectively?
Oh, yes. Yes, so we were actually briefed by intelligence officers straight from there, by two 2 intelligence officers, and it just so happened that our troop commander won a military medal there. It was my old battalion, 1 battalion. So he used to tell us the truth, you know. But funny enough, the most credence we used to give was to letters home from 3 Squadron already deployed, because we all had mates there and they used to write us letters home. So they used to tell us in the letters what to expect. As a matter of fact, SAS is different from the infantry, say everything, where to have a drill similar can be a death sentence in as much as the opponent learns the drill and then puts you in the bag, right? So what they do there, because you're only a small patrol like 4 or 5 or 6, but generally 5, sometimes 4, is that although there is a basis, a basis for a drill, I mean you can only do fire and movement in one way, the clue is to have what we used to call an inbuilt irregularity. So you never sort of did the same thing twice. Can you see what I mean by an inbuilt irregularity? And so we used to read the letters of our mates who were already doing it. And then we'd get ourselves together and we'd go through the motions, pantomime the whole thing. And although we were well prepared, don't worry about that. Although, in fact, in my case only, in my squadron's case, we'd done all our training for Borneo. And it was virtually no time, but the similarities were there. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. And the teamsmanship was there, so really Borneo or the intensity in Vietnam was, quite a lot, huge, quite a lot. You know, the intensity level went up to about grade 9 out of 10 straight away overnight. Where the little fellas were into you mere 5,000 metres outside the wire. They definitely believed it was their own country.
How did you get over to Vietnam?
Via Singapore, Manila. I'm sure it was Singapore. Singapore, Manila, or was it Manila direct? And Saigon, Thomson Youth Airport. Civilian clothes, no uniform allowed. And civilian airline, Qantas. Charter flight, I think, by the regiment. I don't think there was any other unit involved, by memory. But with all the attachments and everything that you have in a SAS squadron, the plane was pretty full, I'd say. What kind was it? I haven't a clue.
What happened immediately when you arrived in Vietnam?
Well, we had our first incident almost from the very minute. Let's say it was a 707 instead of a 747. No, it was a 707. We were in our final. We were making our final descent and our final approach to the runway. And all of a sudden, the aeroplane started to do fighter pilot things. And when he sort of threw her around and jockeyed, he came over the intercom, the Qantas pilot, and said, sorry about that, fellas, but we just had a wounded Phantom 104 or something come in, and it took priority. It landed, obviously shot up, landed right in front of us, and I had to take evasive action. But on this turn, we should be all right. And that kind of reminded you, a wounded Phantom just had their priority landed in front of you. And you said, shit, must be real. Must be real.
It's really happening out there.
It was such a jolly ride until then.
So where did you head off to after you'd landed?
Right, straight to Nui Dat. We got on to either a C-130 or C-123, which is a baby Herc. And believe it or not, and I'm not 100% sure about this, but that particular aircraft started to behave strangely as well. And the story is, and I tell you what, that if it wasn't that, it was something else, because it definitely wasn't. I've been in hundreds of aircraft and thousands of flights, I'd say, and they say that took ground fire as well. And I know that the alert, alarm and everything Anyhow, that's the story. All I know is it behaved awfully strangely, not normal. You know?
So you got a pretty good welcome into
Yeah,
Vietnam.
we got a good welcome into Vietnam, and then landed at Luscombe Field, and like everybody else does, and got out in this dusty old bloody thing, and look around you and you say, my God, you know, what sort of a wonderful place this is. You know, it wasn't like landing in a big city or anything like that. And
Was it a bit of a culture shock?
no. No way in the world. I mean, by that time, I forget how long I'd been in, but it was pretty normal stuff. I don't know. It's definitely not a culture shock. Perhaps a location check. You know, location check is the best way to describe it.
So were you heading towards SAS Hill?
No, not in those days. I was there when we took over SAS Hill. And
Okay, so this is pre the hill being...
Yeah. At that point in time, our squadron, and for a while 2 squadrons served side by side, 3 and 1. I don't know how long, perhaps 2-3 weeks, maybe a month. 2-3 weeks, I'd say, be more likely. And they had a portion on the wire overlooking Long Tan, the battlefield at Long Tan. But then when we arrived, we were drawn in closer towards headquarters, 1ATF, Australian Task Force, and we occupied a position, the 2 squadrons together, almost adjacent to Australian headquarters. Pardon me. And they had patrols out, and bit by bit, as they were coming in, we had some in-country familiarisation and not much acclimatisation. And as their patrols were coming in, they were actually being replaced by ours. And actually, probably the first or second one we put out got into a reasonably good shootout. So there was no time wasted. There was absolutely no time wasted.
Well, what was your first patrol like?
Basically, well, I was keen to go. I couldn't wait. Excited, workmanlike, I hope to think. Was the first sort of aggressive. I mean, I'd been put in by helicopter before in Malaya, and that was fine. But it wasn't, this was the aggressive, you know, the gunships and the everything like not, I mean, our job was still to go in clandestinely and unnoticed, and we used to have cover and deception drills, you know, worked out with helicopters, but still it was aggressive mode, because you could go hot on the pad and all things like that. You know what I'm talking about. And then in those days we only used to infiltrate close to last light to give ourselves a chance to disappear. We just gave ourselves in those days enough light to give us a chance to clear the LZ and get our first, what we call LUP, lying up place, safe and secure. Like, there was only 4 of us or 5 of us, and we were where they were. We were put where they were. It wasn't a matter then of looking for them or trying to find them or them running into you. None of that. You were put where they were. They were there for sure. And so it was a bit of a role reversal, and Malaya then stood me in very good stead, because all of a sudden we're the ones hiding from them, more or less, and we're the one looking and observing them and intelligent. We're the one ambushing them. Yeah, it was a damn good lesson, you know, straight from the outset, straight from the outset, it was a damn good lesson. Yeah.
What sort of equipment would you take with you out on patrol?
Well, this was a thing too. I mean, once again, when you're operating with a battalion, you've got backup, and you've got, you know, even the doctor and everything on hand, and, you know, other company. Here you've got nobody. So you've got 4 or 5 of you. So you have to facilitate all the skills that you would normally have in a larger group within, like your own signallers. You're all trained as a SIG. I was too. Your own medics. First tour I was 2 things. A pioneer, you know, the explosives man in the patrol, or the medic. I ended up being the medic more. Then, and in those days meant carrying we all carried morphine, but albumin, which is a blood supplement, and you know, to drip, to give your fellows a drip. And luckily enough, some blokes had to use it. I didn't. Thank God for that. You know, I used to joke with my blokes that don't you blokes get shot, because instead of this albumin, I'm going to tamp you with an old sandbag instead. We'll tamp you up with an old sandbag instead, and jokes like that, you know. And your med kit was highly sophisticated, or sophisticated enough piece of kit for you to do, especially with the doctor on the other end, say, or the radio, advising you could do some, and some blokes did do complicated or, you know, not routine type surgery, and or even diagnosis of various ailments, you know. We even had a code in our code books. Everything was code. So we even had a code in our code book for intensity of, you know, fevers and things like that, so we could actually communicate to the doctor, giving him, you know, certain numbers, and he would collate it at the other end, and he would come out, and then he would ask your opinion, and you'd give an opinion. He'd either confirm it or say, no, it's not that. And then he would advise you on what to give the bloke, or wherever immediate extraction. Generally, an immediate extraction meant that the whole patrol had to go. There was no such thing as, you couldn't get a resupply. So what happened, you carried your water. Now, we looked like camels. We had 4 water bottles, and we had a bladder, a 5-quart bladder, stuck in the front of our shirts. Everyone looked pregnant, you know. Nothing. What you carried, unless you came across a creek or whatever, which was fine in the wet season, but in the dry season, Phuk Tui was very, very much like West Australia. What training we did for it, we did down Collie, and I thought it was ludicrous. However, when we got there, it was, unless you got up the hills where it got to the Malayan type jungle, it was like Collie. Certain parts of Collie. It was just amazing, because, you know, Phuk Tui province is sort of down on the lowlands a bit. And yes, the training was good. The training was spot on. And yes, I carried when I say carried the med kit, I was the patrol medic more often than not on that first trip. Yeah. Lucky enough, I didn't have to stick a drip in any of I had other things, but lucky enough, I didn't have to stick a drip in. I was trained to do it. It's not a problem.
I was just going to pause there for a second because of the phone, but
yeah, but obviously it's sort of hung up. Yeah.
What other sort of weaponry would you have on you on patrol?
Okay, I cover the water bits. You'd have. I used to carry. Who's that?
I think it's your wife.
Oh, she must be home. Okay. I had. Well, everyone carried a knife of whatever their sort of desire was. Some people carried a K-bar. I carried an RAAF survival knife. It was excellent. You'd carry your grenades from between 2 to 4, depending on your fancy. I used to carry mainly the normal grenades and an M34 phosphorus grenade, and always 2 or 3 or more red smoke or mini smoke, which was for signalling, along with your mirror, along with your panel, when you needed help from the helicopter or you needed fire support. And then you'd mark your position, you'd lay it out. They'd confirm the colouring, because the enemy weren't silly. They also had radio sets and they were listening out. And at least 1 or 2 patrol, we were actually jammed by them. So they had sophisticated equipment in some areas. It wasn't just because their headquarters more or less operated not very far from the Cambodian border, which would be from here to northern from us, which wasn't such a huge distance away, and they could listen out as well. And we, at least once or twice, we were actually jammed in our transmission. So you'd carry your grenades. I always carried 4 loaded magazines. I always carried an SLR, weapon of my choice. This is the thing you have in SAS. Unless a patrol commander or special job demands you to carry something else, you carry the weapon of your choice, right? I always selected what I used to call the old elephant gun, because it used to put people down well and truly once you hit them in the 7.62 round Other people were happy with the 5.56 of the M16. Often they had unders and overs. In those days, the 203, which is the more advanced 5.56 with the 40mm rocket launcher you see, or grenade launcher you see underneath, which is common now, and variations of, more modern versions of, were just starting to come in. But we were sort of experimenting with them. As a matter of fact, our weapons were called XM, experimental model. XM148 by memory, which had the normal M16 with the original 40mm grenade launcher underneath. XM203, experimental model 203. And all the weaponry you see now virtually comes, you know, younger brothers are what you see, and the scopes. We started to experiment with single spot scopes, where you would just aim through the spot and whatever you aim at virtually hit. You see all new concepts. Now you see all of them fitted with the sight or the night laser, the night sight bit and all of this. And the Starlight scope, which was the night vision device, was huge and heavy, and well, it wasn't useless at all. It gave you imagery, but that was about it. It was really heavy and huge, about 2 foot long, weighing, I'd say, 5 kilos perhaps, or 4 kilos, you know, really, whatever. Often you carried a claymore, a spare claymore mine in your pack as well. I also used to carry an extra bandolier of ammunition for a reserve, so I had my magazines on, 4 magazines in my pouches. I had a large 30-round magazine on my SLR, which incidentally the armourer in our case converted to automatic. The SLRs, as a rule, weren't automatic. Okay, so, you know, a single shot fire, but you know, as you pull the trigger. But in our case, they were legitimately converted to an automatic rate. Being a small amount of people, and when we were trying to save our bacon, you had to have a great amount of firepower to break contact and so on. And yes, and then a spare bandolier in the pack. How many rounds would that amount to? I don't know, give or take 200, something like that.
So you're carrying a lot of weight.
Oh yes, amazing lot of weight. But with a lot of the weight being taken up by the water, because you just could not get, no chance. Once you're deployed, once you're on the ground, that's it. You survived for whatever duration you were given, you're told to be out. Be it 5 days in the dry season or 10 days in the wet season where you could get water and then you didn't have to take, and you could take extra food or something like that. That's, you know, whatever they told you, you're out for, you're out for. Whatever you had to last you. If you didn't eat for the last 3 days, too bad, that's it.
What would be the average time that you'd be out?
Well, I think it became a sort of a standard in the end. I have been out longer, or I was out longer, but especially in the dry season, became around 5, 6. And in the wet season, you know, where you could get water, it could go 7. It could go a day so longer, but the concentration level started to wane, and the people knew it. And so, you know, I mean, it's from the very second you're out, you're absolutely concentrating 1,000%. And in the wet season, the sweat and the tension, the adrenaline, which you're controlling because you're moving so slowly, because you are now the ones who are going to be hunted if you're spotted. I mean, even the effort of the slow movement over the ground, the actual body tension and even the mental tension was just amazing. It was, I defy any person to say that they cruised along. If they did, they must have been superhuman. I mean, or their patrol must have been noisy or lucky or something or other. And I reckon you'd be battling to keep it up more than 5 days. Of course you can, and we have, and we did. But you know, we're after effectiveness, getting the job done, be it a close reconnaissance, be it an ambush, be it even trying to take a prisoner, be it a recce ambush, a reconnaissance ambush, whatever the job was, whatever they gave you, you had to, the minute you landed, the concentration levels were amazing.
How many different sorts of missions would you be going on? Like you mentioned reconnaissance and taking a prisoner, or...
Mainly, we were tasked by the task force, or the squadron would be tasked by the task force, the higher element, or even divisional intelligence. And then they would tell you what they wanted. Then our boss would sort of decipher it and decide wherever it's going to be a one patrol task. When I say not together, but differently, you know, wherever he would program us over a period of time or whatever. And then you would react to that job. Now, mostly the task force commander or divisional intelligence wanted intelligence. He wanted to know where they were, what they did, how well. Things like footprint, we used to copy, we used to sketch them. Imprinted it, because if it's poor footwear, would give you an indication that they're not getting resupplied, or they're walking a lot, you know, they're wearing their things down. A brand beautiful spanking footprint could say it's a new unit in there, just fresh from Ho Chi Minh Trail or somewhere. Can you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Everything counted. There was no such thing as, you recorded everything, every single thing, and so on. And generally, with, let's say, X amount of SAS patrols, infantry patrols, spies, whatever, all coming into a central location, that's where they build what's known as the intelligence picture. So often you would be checking or doing a part of the picture which you had no idea about, but they knew back, whoever ordered you out on the job. So,
How much ground would you cover in a patrol?
not much. You were generally landed to do a specific job, and you were landed there onto it. And your rate of movement, I mean, there was no, I mean, the thing was you're not to be discovered. You're always at a total disadvantage the minute you're discovered, as panic situation. Not panic as your panic, but they're going to come and do you in. You're always outnumbered. It doesn't take much to outnumber 5 blokes at all. So no matter how good you are. And they did, and they tried many times, and so on. Anyhow, you were landed there, and then you went towards your objective, which was a camp, a suspected site, or a track where you were perhaps to try and lay an ambush on, or just count them walking past, or whatever the task was. Now, towards the end of the patrol, after you more or less did your intelligence down, you could request that you engage them, right? Now, you either got a request, or sometimes you got the request granted before you went out, that this will be a reconnaissance or whatever, but you can have an ambush phase if the target warrants it. In other words, left up to the patrol commander. Often this was not so. I have been on one, or not one, but quite a few where we were told that, you know, you just do the intelligence bit and that's it, and avoid contact at all costs. You know, you're there, you're a phantom, you're not around. And often those are a lot harder.
Why is that?
Well, you never know what's at the end of the request. Like for the intelligence picture, I mean, for all you know, you by becoming a bit more gung-ho like you would if you knew that a shootout had been granted, sort of thing, you know, obviously if you're doing both, you obviously know that, because the minute you do have your contact or whatever, you lay an ambush, they know you're there, right? But obviously in cases where you were told you to avoid contact or you're not allowed to have it, it's obviously important that you don't, because they've got phase 2 or something or other, an operation going in on it. So, you know, so if you sort of granted it beforehand, you knew that it wasn't quite as strict as it would be, where you were virtually told that only in an emergency, only if you get sprung, only, and so on and so on. Yeah.
What sort of contacts did you have on that first tour?
My first patrol?
Yeah.
Well, it was from the very onset I knew what the hell was going on. Now, wherever we had a shootout on that one, I don't know, but we certainly got surrounded, and that was exciting. We were actually started our reconnaissance mission, and all of a sudden after midday, the message came around, no talking at all, it's all hand signals and, you know, little clicks and with the tongue and attracting each other and speaking through your hands and eyes and gestures or tapping your butt, and we all knew the lingo. And I got the lingo from the bloke next door that we're up stakes and we're off. And he whispered to me just, I was the last in the chain, that we're surrounded. And of course I didn't, and he of course took off as fast as he could go. I mean, we tippy-toed around, but when you had to move fast, you moved fast, and he moved like a rocket. And I wasn't, he was my mate, I mean, we worked in a patrol. And then I looked around, and I saw, all you see is this wave of moving trees coming towards you. I think I nearly caught up with him. I really don't know. I think we managed to get away from that one without opening fire. We could have, I could have, I mean, but I think that one we kept nice and quiet, and we brought back some good data there. So the first patrol was your surrounded patrol.
I thought, what have you got yourself into here?
Well, yes, it makes you think, and then of course the fact that you know, it was harder not to have a shootout. It was harder not to have a shootout than to have a shootout. That was a real war, you know, bullet flying war. So, and then of course it happened sooner than later, and it's always hairy. 5 of you, 4 of you against a platoon or whatever, and you know, the bits and pieces are falling off the trees and the lead flying past, and then you get back, you break contact, you escape, you go to one side, and I mean escape, because they're onto you and they know. The only thing that ever used to pause them, we knew this from the prisoners, is because our weapons were automatic, they're confused. See, there's a ratio in most army. There's a section consists of around 9 men. You can have more or less, right? But always the main firepower is a machine gun, right? And so all other soldiers count how many there are by the machine gun. If you hear 1 machine gun, you hear 2 machine gun, you know there's about 18 blokes. You hear 3 machine guns, you say, 30, right? But all of a sudden you're hearing 5 going off in one session. And quite apart from the fact that there's a lot of firepower coming towards you, and even though you're a fanatic, you don't really want to die. I mean, you do. I mean, now you've got the religious people doing it in a different way. But believe me, the Viet Cong didn't quite do it that way. They were very brave and very dedicated, but they come to a grinding halt when they were greeted with a 5-power, 5 automatic weapon. Confused them. When you hear 5 automatic weapons, that ought to be about 100 people as far as they're concerned. You know, company, they were striking a company. So shit, you know, we better ease up on this. We're going up against a company of 100 blokes, but it wasn't. There was only 5 of us. And by the time they sort of got it sorted out, we were gone like a rocket. You can imagine it. It gave us that breathing space to break contact, go off on the flank, outflank them, and then as soon as we could, ask for the helicopters to come and take us out, because to stay there was suicide, absolute suicide, you know. Sometimes they'd spot you going in and they would signal with their rifle shots. It wasn't quite for a while later till we debriefed another prisoner that we used to hear 4 or 5 rifle shots. It was for one of each of us. How many of us landed would be the rifle shots. We thought that the signal shot is generally 1 or 2. It took us a while, as I say, a prisoner said, that when they're sick, lame and lazy, they would put on an LZ watch, landing zone watch. And wherever they had binoculars or not, or just, you know, or wherever they had a radio or not, back to their main camp, or wherever they sent a runner back, whatever, But all their main sort of landing zones, they're sick, lame and lazy, wounded, they always had them watching their pertinent points. So often, even if we landed on the far side of the clearing, and we used to try and edge in as far as we could, you know, and the drill, we'd be gone in 10 seconds, and as I say, the helicopters would do cover and deception. But having said that, we're still humans. We're still going to, and we're up against other humans, so no matter how good you are. And often the early signal shots you'd hear, perhaps from the other side, and 4 or 5 were really counting us and letting the rest know. Some commanders would then dispatch their patrol to tail us. This is common, to track you, to tail you. Some commanders would tell the tailing patrol just to keep an eye on us, and then they'd come and take us out when we looked like getting dangerous in their mind. Some commanders, I'm reciting, I know what it's like on the ground, I've experienced it on the ground, but it's nothing like a prisoner telling you, you know what. Some would straight away send out like the old Zulu horns and sort of try and cut you off and get you in the guts. That happened a few times as well. And of course we knew all of that. It didn't really matter which flank they were coming from, as long as we could sort of handle it and avoid them was the main thing. But if we couldn't, then we had the normal all contact situation, and we had code words and things to send. I mean, it was not uncommon in some situations that you ran your aerial out and your bloke would be tapping out the extraction word, code word, and the Viet Cong doing in the sweep would get the signal aerial on the throat. And at one particular time there's a tug of war between our bloke and the other fella on the other end trying to pull in the aerial. And this was common stuff. I mean, in a camp, I was in a camp many times, but this never happened to me. But one of the blokes actually got the old line up the throat, the clothesline, where they had to, and one actually fell down their gun pits. And it's really unbelievable situations, you know. And we used to get them in every kind of position, you know, like on the bog house, making love, every kind of thing. I mean, sometimes we shoot them, sometimes we didn't, depending on the job. It just, it was, it was just unbelievable stuff. It was very normal then, but looking back on it now, it wasn't quite the norm, I suppose. And they hated us. They absolutely hated us. We were their number 3 hate. What
was the other number 2?
Number 1 was B-52 strike. Number 2 hate was H&I fire, harass and intermittent fire, which later on was called A&I fire, acquired an intelligence target. Mostly the intelligence targets came from us. We'd plot their camps or whatever, and then the gunners back at the Nui Dat would plot in whatever the task force told them for that night. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, they just roll out of bed and fire a salvo. At the other end, the Viet Cong would be nice and asleep and safely tucked away. Next minute, they're on the bottom of a huge barrage, out of nowhere. That's harassment and intermittent fire, or acquired an intelligence target fire. And they do it intermittently, it's just any time they like. And according to the prisoner, it had such an effect that they started to sleep without their mosquito nets, and their rate of malaria went sky high. There's many ways to win a war.
Yeah.
Things like that. And we were number 3. According to this lady that used to come on, we called Hanoi Hannah, we would jump out of the bushes and stab their honourable men in the back. And the price on our heads, if we're to believe it, was more than a helicopter. A helicopter, I think, I'm running on memory here, was a bag of rice and perhaps the bike. But we were 15,000 piastres. That's their local currency. 15,000, have I got it right? Piastres? Yeah, I'm sure. 15,000 piastres. And we were guaranteed a trip to Hanoi for interrogation. 15,000, I think we were 15,000 piastres was the price on our head. Oh, and they tried a few times to put us in a bag, to capture us rather than do us in. 15,000 piastres for them was a lot of money.
Probably a year's wage.
Oh, more. I reckon the average Viet Minh, say, the average Viet Cong had a farm or something, but the average Viet Minh soldier who'd been away from North Vietnam for about 4 or 5 years, his pay would be something like about $2 a month or $2 a week, or 2 piastres a week. So 15,000 piastres was, you know, like, yes, it was quite a thing. We would jump out of the bushes and stab her. They had called us Marung, or Marung, or in other words, Phantoms of the Jungle. Phantoms of the Jungle. And there's another thing we didn't realise. When we laid them out, when we shot them or whatever, what appeared to grieve them was that we left the bodies laying face down. Some of them, we just left them as they were. You know, this is combat, right? But we didn't really realise. They thought we did it deliberately, because apparently you're meant to roll a body over so the soul can descend to heaven. And they thought we deliberately left them laying face down. And we never had the faintest idea about this kind of stuff. It's amazing what you learn from the enemy and the effect we had on them that we didn't realise. Oh, they just absolutely, you know, they were scared of us and they didn't like us. And that was obvious. It didn't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to work it out. They reckon we were brave. That was okay. That was okay.
How would you get the signal to get pulled out of an operation if it got too dangerous?
Oh, that choice was the commander on the ground, and that was always the code word. And then the helicopters would be scrambled, and helicopters would always be governed by an albatross lead, as we used to call it, a high helicopter that had a greater picture and of the thing, rather than the helicopters down at tree level who were going to do the operation and pluck you up. And he would command wherever they needed a strike first, or they needed to neutralise the enemy around us, or they whatever. And then, of course, we would, as soon as they came near, we would get on our Sabi, or PRC 66, I think they called it, you know, talking on their frequency, and they would, but to attract their attention, we would hit them with a mirror. We had a mirror. They reckon the flash on the side of the fuselage, you know, where the perspex and that was so big, used to blind them even. Yeah, for us on the ground, it was so small. Then, of course, they would talk to you. Then they would verify you with a panel. Then they would ask you to throw smoke, but you didn't tell them what colour, because then they would look around, because the Viet Cong, if they were listening out, or the Viet Minh, they would throw smoke as well. Then the chopper would ask you what colour yours was. It was a bad mistake for the other blokes if they had a different colour, or if they could fix, because then they used to use that as a marker and absolutely demolish them. It's like marking your own position, so it was a bit of a precarious job for them. And this is how an extraction took place. And then it was either a decision of the albatross lead, because by that time he was in charge and you were just a package, of wherever he would let the gunships well and truly neutralise the ground, strafe it, or have the gunship standing by, have the slick ship come and pick you up first and respond. And they used to do all kinds of cover and deception and crisscross patterns and, you know, whatever. But the minute you were lifted, they would saturate the area, absolutely saturated. What can I say? One particular patrol, and there's a lot, so in 2 tours there's a lot, so you try and get it clear in your head. We were in an area where there was a huge battle between the Republic of Vietnamese soldiers and the Viet Minh. Okay, huge battle, and the artillery had gone in, really pasted the area, and B-52 strike had also gone in, and that particular task was a bomb damage assessment or a battlefield assessment, right? Sometimes you were tasked in to do a bomb damage assessment. You had to go in and assess how successful, which was pretty horrific stuff. You're in and out of huge shell holes, and some of these unexploded 150,000 pound ton bloody bombs or whatever still sticking out of the ground like darts. But anyhow, it was very hard going, and often in an exposed area, because one B-52 strike could virtually clear an area of 2,000 metres by 10,000 metres, one aeroplane alone, which is a fair strip, isn't it?
Sure.
Imagine a whole flight coming in. Anyhow, this was a battle damage or battle. It wasn't quite a bomb damage, although that was part of it. It was a battle assessment area. You know, I don't know. I have to assume it was day one or day two, something like that. We always used to sleep close to the tracks because you learn a lot by the people walking past, right? So mostly, it depends on the tactical situation. Sometimes you got right away, right? But generally you're within Kui, okay? Which had its advantages and disadvantages. Advantage is that you got warning about movement and stuff. Disadvantage that if they sprung you, they could line up on it and use it as a start line and finish you off. Anyhow, we're relatively close to this one this day, and we were actually awoken by their signal shots. Not about us, but because they were shorter radios, they used to signal to each other, different junctions, topographical points, all clear or whatever it was. Anyhow, we were woken by them and blokes patrolling past. So we got ourselves together, and that was the only time you took your gear off, was at night. And even then you slept on it. You just never took your gear off. You might unloosen your belt at midday, but that's it. Nothing else. You always had it on you. Anyhow, ready for an instant, you know. Anyhow, we decided to move position and cross to the other side of the track. And then we patrolled towards where these Viet Cong had patrolled, right? So they went okay for a while, and we looked up, and there was this bloke bearing down, stalking us with a crossbow. Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know which is better, a bullet or to be impaled on one of those crossbow shafts. I haven't the flaming faintest idea. It didn't look too appealing anyhow, which way. So we decided, oh, bugger this, we'll, you know, we can't have too much of this. So we let the bloke get close, and of course, without going into all the gory how detailed you want to get or what, I mean.
Well, as explicit as you're prepared to be with regards to this incident, it's fine.
In actual fact, for where I was on the flank, and I had a wonderful view of the man stalking us, it was a tall one and a short one, and the short one was very, very small, which, yeah. Anyhow, when he got to the point where, because we were quite prepared with our job to let it pass, to let him pass, but I mean, once somebody's stalking you, it's pretty hard to sort of break contact and get out of his way or whatever, but we were hoping on hope, so we let him come, I don't know, from me 2 metres, 3 metres. Incidentally, in both my tours, I think the furthest I ever shot at a bloke was 2-3 metres maximum. It was always that close. It was, no way in the world was it something like 50 or anything like that, or 40 or 30, no way in the world. It was always, you know, 2-3 metres away that you engaged, or well, we did anyhow. So this was it. We engaged the bloke with a crossbow, and we well and truly drilled him, and I still remember movement behind, and I give it a bit of a spray or whatever. But anyhow, part of the job is they, not having the administrative system we did, carried the gear on them. So pay books and things were always in their packs. Valuable intelligence, right? Often signals movements. So our job immediately always was, whenever we got one of them, was to cut off the equipment, and we would carry it all back and give it to the intelligence people, right? Anyhow, that means always somebody does the searching. So the boss yelled out, "Paddy, you, me, search the body." Not a problem. No drill. Go forward. We put a lot of bullets into this man, and because, you know, he sort of come into a half circle almost of us. And his back was, by this time we're all pretty hardened, and but his back was so riddled that I said to the boss, "We're not going to turn him over, are we? Because the other side is always worse." He said, no. He says, "Cut the gear off him as he is, and let's bloody get out of here," you know. So I'm running forward with my knife. And all of a sudden, the smaller one comes out, who happened to be a kid. And a head wound, even though bleeds like mad. I mean, you know, you cut your head and you got blood. It was a horrific sight. And me, I was a father and I had kids. He'd be about 9, I suppose, like I was in the Second War. No, like after it. And anyhow, he yelled out, "Uktaloi, Uktaloi," which means Australian, come running towards me. And I'm like cutting the gear off this fella. And I don't know if he grabbed hold of me or cuddled me or whatever. I just can't remember that bit. I really can't. But anyhow, it comes straight. That was a shock. That was an absolute shock. And there we were. And of course, the people who had earlier fired the shot on the track and gone ahead of us and heard the shooting were now all turning around and coming back towards us. So there we were with this dreadful situation, this young kid who'd obviously been wounded in the head, and we got some intelligence, we're doing our job, and of course the bad guys are bearing down on us like steam. So the boss said, "Paddy, shoot the kid," right? And, you know, wherever he meant or not, I don't have a clue. By rights, that's it, because there's only 5 of us, and we're you know, outnumbered. And no animal, I said, "You do it." "No worry." And he said to the patrol, you know, not because we were cruel or any damn thing, you know, this is a pretty desperate situation. Any minute, if you delay much more, you're going to be dead as a maggot. So these are the choices you got. Anyhow, he said to the patrol too, "I see you shoot the kid." He says to the boss, "Go and get stuffed." This is a big argument with the whole enemy bearing down on us, you know. And there we are having an argument about a humanitarian issue, you know. Anyhow, Mel solved it. He ran forward, grabbed the kid under and then we peeled off we had a drill like a banana, you know, firing and peeling off sort of thing. And there we are running through the scrub like mad things, in line, control, with the kid under the arm. And I remember the old signaller, who at this particular point in time hadn't been able to do his stuff. I mean, we had to get away and get into some sort of a safe, calm situation and send a code word to say, "Come and get us." Anyhow, I remember him, he was sort of had the crossbow at the ready as well. Anyhow, as soon as we could, we sent a code word and we said, you know, "There's too many of them." And of course, over comes the bird, the albatross one, but mind you, it took 40 minutes. So we had to hide away in the void for 40 minutes at this particular point in time. The kid was extremely well trained, and I mean trained like a soldier. Like, for instance, when we went into all-round defence, he took his part in the all-round defence. He went down in the fire position, even he had no rifle. And even though we're going with his people, when we gave him a drink of water, because he knew he must be in some kind of state of shock, he didn't scull it, he sniffed it. He put it in his mouth, he swilled it around, spat it out, decided it was all right, then had a drink. Right? We're talking about a 9-year-old kid here. When we gave him a chocolate bar, he smelt that. Didn't gobble it down, put it in his pocket for later. Anyhow, he started, when the Viet Cong pressure went on and he started to sort of want to gibber a bit, perhaps maybe calling out to them even, and we said, shut up, you know. He shut up immediately. Exactly. Followed every order exactly like a trained soldier. We were amazingly impressed. Anyhow, we managed to get the signal up and overcome the bird after a while, the agonising long wait, and this goes back to about an extraction. He said, no good. He said, can't get you out of there. No good. He said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to get in line. I'm giving you a compass bearing. Your last man puts the panel, the red panel, over his pack. But don't deviate. And when I say go, I want you to run on that compass bearing, which was all right up there in the cool aircraft, but down below, the bloke holding the compass's hand was like that. Yeah, it's all very well watching it in the movies. Anyhow, when he said go, we did. We ran on that bearing best we could, keeping in mind the logs and the trees and everything, you know. And you never believe it. But he had the gunship chute on either side of us, formed the tunnel. And we were running, and to be on the wrong end of the, not the wrong end, but to be down at ground level with the gunships, and they've got minigun on either side, 6,000 rounds per minute, 6,000 rounds per minute, which is pretty flaming fierce, I think. And so, and the crescendo down at this level is just unbelievable. And so there we were running in a tunnel of sound. we were very frightened of deviating off it now with all these hornet things coming in on either side. And he got him to fire a nice path for us through till we got to another clearing, and he said, that's it, prop there. You know, this was the bloke controlling it up there. It was out of our control by then. And we propped, and then he said, now throw smoke, which we did. And then he said, oh, that's funny, we got two of them. He said, what colour was yours? Now, I can't tell if ours was the same as theirs, but it didn't matter. He very quickly sorted out, perhaps with our mirror or our panel, and plus the fact they've been looking at us as we were running. And within minutes, that other smoke was pulverised. You know, absolutely pulverised. And next minute, the slick ship, the pickup ship, flared. You know how helicopter loses speed by flaring like a big dragonfly, and virtually dropped into our lap, and we just all ran on. I forget if it was 1 and 2. And as we lifted, the door gunners just opened up and let it rip, and I think we also shot out. And that's when the kid lost it, and he started to cry. You know, that's the only time he lost it. But I mean, that's such a, unless you're used to that kind of stuff, that's, you know, real traumatic stuff. Anyhow, the bottom line is this. He was the son of a, his dad was the guerrilla leader for the area, and he was with him when he was shot the week before. The person we shot was his uncle, and he was on patrol with his uncle. His mum was sick and tired of the guerrilla life. Look, I can't remember the unit or whatever. And had in actual fact surrendered to the nearest ARVN, Army of Republic unit, given herself up. However, they, being what they are, made her an agent and sent her back and said, you got to stay, okay? Because they probably blackmailed her, said that, then they would tell the rest of them that she's an agent provocateur or whatever. And in the meantime, of course, this kid is going out on patrol with all his relatives, which the security forces are killing in front of him. Anyhow, the upshot of the whole thing is that when we got him back to the task force, we got a voice aircraft up, the intelligence people. I forget her name, Mrs. Wee. And a voice aircraft flew over the area, which, you know, we pinpointed by then, and said, Mrs. Wee, we have your son. Please come out of the jungle immediately. And by that afternoon, she was out. We put him in the orphanage. And by that afternoon, she was out and rejoined with a boy at the orphanage, who afterwards we used to send money to. And she just gave this bundle of intelligence, just an absolute bundle, of intelligence. Did you find that interesting or not?
Yeah, it's an amazing
Because
events.
I don't want to sort of...
No, it's good.
Yeah, and it's just an classical example of how an extraction can happen, and But the 40 minutes it took, that's a long 40 minutes. That's a long 40 minutes. That's one. Oodles. It was more, I can't, not only, yes, heaps. Which one? Well, what else would you like? Ask me a question.
Well, you did mention earlier during the break we had for a coffee about a close shave with a sniper. I'm wondering if there are any other close shaves like that you might want to just record.
Yeah. Heaps of close shaves. I mean, actually, when you're in a firefight, there's so much rounds coming, and often from directions you don't even least expect, and the foliage coming down, and often you might blow your claymores and things like that. There's a sort of I won't call it organised confusion, but really there's a lot happening. There's a lot going down. The sniper shot was probably, wouldn't even rate very highly, except it scared the hell out of me and my mate when we were just going forward to... We were signalled originally with a hand, but then we leant towards each other to whisper, and the sniper shot sunk between his face and mine into the tree where we were sort of sheltering. And we to this day we couldn't work out where it was coming from. But close shaves, where I was trying to capture a bloke, and in a very, very bad area, totally controlled by them.
What was the name of the area?
Maytao Mountains, and the Maytao Mountains area of Phuk Tui, Bin Tui and Long Khan area. Pardon me. And I won't go into the whole preamble of it, but it got to the point where we were confident enough, because we had some armoured personnel carriers nearby, where we could attempt a snatch. To attempt a snatch, to take a prisoner deliberately. Prisoners generally happen rather than, you deliberately snatching them. Like we did try all kinds of things, using gas, whatever. And we did take prisoners, but as I say, more often than not it was a happening rather than a deliberate snatch where you had to take a man, right? But on this occasion, I decided with the situation as it was, and I only had a few minutes to make up my mind wherever I was going to either shoot him dead on the spot or sort of take him. And I had my mate, Billy was just next door. It was his first patrol in country. But first patrol, first everything. I placed him on this side of the track because I was actually, at that point in time, providing protection with a bunch of armoured personnel carriers. They were actually infiltrating us as a cover of deception, moving into this very bad area. Anyhow, along they came in about 5 seconds flat. And I thought, the reason I got into that sort of idea was because the fellow had absolutely, he had equipment. It was a Viet Minh for sure, absolutely, no doubt. And behind him was his Viet Cong mate, who was in the atypical black Viet Cong local gear, but this fellow was very big man for a Vietnamese, authoritative, had a proper uniform, all this kind of stuff. But I couldn't see his AK-47, so I thought, unarmed, I can't remember the second bloke now. I remember him, I can see him, but I don't know. I couldn't see a weapon on him either, because if I'd have seen a weapon on both, I would have just dropped him like a hot potato, and that's the end of the story. Anyhow, a rush of blood to the head, and I let him come up to about 2 metres away, and I said, really loud, Dong Loi, which is, give up or hands up. And he did, they were rooted to the spot, but the thing was that he couldn't see me. He heard the voice, but, because I was in the bush, and so was the other bloke, the rest of them were way back. There was only 2 of us. And he just couldn't, so I realised I'd have to get up and stand up my full height and confront him, and I did. And I bore down on him and I looked him in the eye and I said, "Dung Loi," and I thought, you've got this fella, he's going to do as he's told. No way in the world. What I didn't realise, his AK was tucked here, and in a flash he had it out and he started firing about here. He blasted right past my left-hand side, ruffled my hair like that, and by that time, of course, I'd hit him 2 or 3 times here, spun him around, and then my other mate just went, boom, just drove him with his burst to the thing, and I'm not going to go into detail, but buckets of blood come out of a person and all this kind of stuff. He dropped his weapon on the thing, and I could see the rest of his mob coming up behind him, so I suppressed that, and by, of course, that time my other mates were coming down and joining in. And then I'm shortcutting a lot of the detail, here, and by that time we up and move forward to the bend, around the bend. And I don't know how the other blokes felt, but every time I had to get up when I thought somebody had me, it's quite a feeling. That's when you get good discipline. You either got it or you haven't. I mean, your legs are rubbery or whatever. Anyhow, we got to the spot where his mates had picked them both up. They'd both been hit and dead and carried them. So we did a follow-up, which myself and another mate were the tracker for. But because we had armour nearby, they sort of task force decided on an infantry, because we were SAS, but we were classified then as ground troops, an infantry follow-up. And we were pushing towards a very big camp of theirs, which we suspected was Dong Ten, a kind of a special forces camp, and also by memory where an American push, the side we came in from, rather than the Australian side, had lost about, I don't know how many men killed us attacking it. And there we were like galahs, especially myself and Blue walking down, not walking down, we were patrolling down, like shags on a rock. And anyhow, cut a long story short, they discovered back at the other end a big cache of explosives and I don't know about food, rice, whatever, huge cache. So all of a sudden our exercise up the front, the capture and all of that, or attempted capture, was forgotten, and they wanted to get into the heavier duty, cache. But even after that, because we were on our way to be infiltrated, for once not by helicopter, I've been infiltrated by helicopter, by sea, from the D-Day type thing, vectored in from a small boat, by radar and all of that, and walking in. And anyhow, we were continued, we radioed to task force and asked to call the game off because we thought there was too much shooting activity and that we were supposed to infiltrate clandestinely, not advertise our presence all and sundry. But anyhow, task force refused it, so we had to keep going. And down we went and infiltrated into this area. And now we had a drill with the armoured personnel carriers. They would do false turns and things like that. And for anybody watching, they wouldn't know at what point we just slipped away. By that time we were in our camouflage gear and all of that. And sure as hell, they'd worked it out. They're not silly. And we heard the signal shots just before dark that they were onto us. That the trackers had found our track, which we go to great pains. We move very slow to cover. That's why we move slow and everything. We're not supposed to be there. Anyhow, so all of us, and by this time we'd come up like a camp in front of us, or a transit camp, or a staging camp, or a group of them. So there we were with last light and a group in front and a group right up our bum, or the trackers right up our bum. Not very desirable, and in the middle of a huge track complex, which we tried to avoid, And joke, humour, patrol commander Ian Bullock, mate of mine, I had to sleep on one of the tracks because his logic was that the passing Viet Cong would kick me in the head and then I'd wake the rest of them. I don't know, but I had a good night's sleep anyhow, and obviously nobody come past. But anyhow, next day we advanced on the camp to do a close reconnaissance on it, And while doing it, the blokes caught up with us, the ones up our bum. So what we did then, priorities first, we decided to ambush the fellas up our tail. And so we put the claymores out and give them a good blast, and that sort of kind of finished off that exercise for a short time, not very long, because they were all over the place. And I was the last man closest to the position, and as they withdrew through me, they threw down some of their grenades, which was the drill of that particular patrol that I was with, because each patrol has a different thing. In their patrol, the man closest to the action throws all the grenades, which I did, of course, but, you know, some come bouncing back through the branches and everything, and, of course, they're getting a fair old head start on me in this particular case. And then, of course, they're in the clearing, and then we have to sort of run over the clearing one at a time, trying to avoid their fire. And of course, I'm the last man. You'd think by that time they get their aim in, wouldn't you? And anyhow, it was the same old setup. There was too much for us to handle. And the helicopters were called. This time they were a bit faster, and the first gunship coming in to do the bit of a look-see was straight away came under ground fire, and so on. And then this time, because we didn't have a proper pad, we were winched out, 2 at a time, hanging under this winch. And while we were actually going up into the old chopper, they were really getting into us. They're pinging into us as we're hanging beneath the winch. And my rifle got stuck under the skid, and the crew chief was going berserk because nobody likes to take the old ground fire. I didn't enjoy it either, but he thought I must have caused it. And once inside, he was busy working the winch. I got behind his twin M60s. Well, you know, they've got them on either side. And I just saw my mates down on the ground. By that time, they were back to back, so I just shot a good little pattern for them around while they were winched up. And that, I would say, is, well, I don't know how you read it, but pretty couple of close shaves there as well, I suppose. But this is pretty normal fare. This is pretty normal fare. This was normal fare. You know, it didn't happen every patrol. There were patrols where you never saw anyone and you had a quiet time. They weren't that often. The more hotter ones were generally, no. I don't know the percentage, but the percentage of the hot and hairy ones were, you know, they may not be predominant, but they certainly 1 for 1 or something like that.
I think you've satisfied the question, Paddy.
Well,
well, look,
that's all I can think about. I mean, you know, there was, there's probably more.
How many operations did you complete?
Well, I did 2 years, and how often would we go out? I don't know, every 3 or 4 weeks. And however, I didn't go out so much on my second time because I was by that time working in the intelligence section as well. But I still did go out and still do some really excellent jobs. Definitely over a dozen, 2 dozen, goodness knows. But even when you're in country, you manned by that time the hill. We went to SAS Hill, and we used to man the pits. The guns have a picket up there. And first tour, anyhow, we got mortared there. I wouldn't say it was a huge mortar attack, but a mortar attack's a mortar attack. And really, you were never off the job, even when you're back there. The only time I'd say you're off the job is when you went on. In those days, we had R&C, a couple of days in Vung Tau, which I think happened to me once. And then you had R&R, which was 5 days, which I think happened to me twice. I think in 2 tours, I had something like 15 days off or 14 days off or something like that. I think at one time, first tour probably, can't remember being off the hill unless we were put into operations like I just described for 8 months. Not only me, but the other blokes. You know, it was a area. Perhaps we come off it to go to task force headquarters, which was fair enough, or to the local PX. But apart from that, or whether maybe you got a driving duty to deliver or something, but really, you definitely never left the confines of Newydad Hill. I seem to recall for 8 months at one time. I would say in the 2 years I wouldn't have had more away from Newydad, say, forget about the hill, maximum 20 days, maximum 20 days. But I doubt even if it was that. I honestly don't believe it was that much, which isn't a lot of time off, is it?
No. Paddy, can you explain or describe what life was like at the task force headquarters and how you spent the time on R&C or R&R?
Oh, R&C, different kettle of fish to what we did in Malaya. Although you went to Vung Tau, which was a nice town, and let's face it, you also got full as a boot, but the difference was, whereas before in Malaya, say, you went and lived at the hotel, here, as a rule, you lived at the R&C centre, which there was a few. There was one down by the ocean, the earlier one, and one towards the middle of the town oval, but there was a curfew on, and you're meant to be back by curfew. A lot of the blokes broke curfew, but you could be shot by the white mice. This was the fellas. It was a great break. I mean, I can only remember having perhaps two, one per tour perhaps. I would say I probably spent more time in hospital than I did on leave, because we couldn't take, like one instance, because we couldn't take water resupply in the hot season, and we couldn't, I mean, obviously I carried as much as I could, but my kidneys crystallised. Instead of being, you know, like a sponge to siphon through whatever, they actually crystallised into sand. And so when you went to the toilet, it was just a stream of blood and beach sand coming out. And I know because they got it in a bottle and then they showed it to me in a bottle and there was that much beach sand. And they just force-fed me fluid to get it back to a reasonable level. And I mean force-fed you fluid and then send you back again to keep doing it some more.
Well, how did you spend that time in Vung Tau?
Same thing, you left the iron. First thing I ever did was get a decent shower or a decent bath. I mean, we had a shower rigged up at that, but it wasn't like a, you know, normal accommodation. It was okay, nothing wrong with it. Went to, if there was a bath in the, you know, I'm trying to think now, in the thing, I'd have a soak, you know, sort of tidy up. If there was a shower, you have a long shower without, you know, water restrictions, because up at that, you know, only the water trucks delivered the water, so, you know, every soldier that's ever been in the field knows about the water restrictions. Have a bath, and you generally either went and had a more civilised meal. I know this sounds terrible, and I hope poor old cooks, I hope they don't get offended, you know, back at the hill, but you had a civilised meal. Then you probably, at the R&C Centre, probably had drinks there, mainly because they were cheap. I mean, they weren't that dear downtown. And then perhaps spent the first day there, half full as a boot, flaked out or whatever the thing. Or what was more the case was you got steamed up there and headed for town. And then, of course, got arrested for violating curfew and goodness knows what. And this was the general drill.
What was downtown Vung Tau like?
Not bad. French type of town, French layout. It had seedy bars, you know, had a middle class, high class, had a high class hotel. It was beachside resort. Actually, in actual fact, it was a all French beach resort. It was very nifty. It was excellent, really.
What kind of exploits did you get up to in those seedy bars?
Well, we used to drink booze and you know, try and chase the chicks, I suppose, and normal soldier stuff, absolute normal, and hoping not to get shortchanged by the money changers who were very sleight of hand, and often you'd end up with far less money than you ever gave them, you know, to get hold of the local stuff. I can't recall too many. There was the odd punch up there. I never saw it between our blokes. I saw it mainly between Americans, and perhaps maybe with the people who are permanently based nearby. We had an Australian logistics group there. I can't ever recall. I can recall a few hostile things, but I can't recall nothing like you know, battalion on battalion or something like that. And this is really how the 3 days went, and they went faster than you can ever imagine it. 3 days faster than you can ever imagine it. And then you're back into it. But at least it gave you a break. It used to be a great relief sometimes when there was a convoy and they needed an escort, and you were nominated as an escort, and then you could go in and perhaps stay at the RAAF sort of compound there that they had or whatever. It was a huge break, a huge mental break, stimulus, you know.
Apart from the alcohol, was there any drug use?
I only saw it once. Oh, hang on a minute. I saw it once, and the bloke was arrested. He was a Yank, and one of our blokes used it, and he was arrested and treated, what I thought, considering his war record, although it was anti-drugs, and still am, disgracefully, absolutely disgracefully. They took his war entitlement off him, his medals, his everything. It was almost like the old-fashioned, you know, being drummed out of the service routine. And yes, it was supposedly prevalent in a lot of the American units. I had a short time with an American unit, not long. I didn't see it, but on the streets of Saigon, say, they were offering you heroin, matchbox full, for something like 30 or 40 bucks. You know, I don't know what they do nowadays, but I think a matchbox full of pure heroin would be worth more than 40 bucks, wouldn't it? I mean,
I don't know what the current market rate is.
What the current market rate is. It didn't interest me. What did interest me was the comments by the American soldiers that whenever they came up an operation, most of them, like all other Aussies or whatever, and perhaps maybe some Aussies did it, got on the booze and made animals of themselves, whereas that small fraction that only relied on the old marijuana were nice and peaceful in the corner watching all the animal shit. So whatever. I mean, that's what they used to say. They'd have their own quiet, you know, little clique that was, you know, drifting away into a cloud, and then the rest of them pouring it in their ear and chundering and flaming fighting with each other. So where does civilization start or end? But I'm only getting that story secondhand. Honestly, I never, even the bloke who they chastised in our mob, I never witnessed it in any shape or form.
What drug was he accused of?
He just had a marijuana. That's it. That was it. You know, nothing more, nothing less. But somebody either saw it or reported or whatever, and he was treated, in my opinion, in spite of the fact that I was against it, disgracefully, absolutely disgracefully. The punishment he got and the disgrace heaped on him was not worth, and the good soldier that he was not worth it in any shape or form. Absolutely not.
What was life like in the task force headquarters when you weren't on patrol?
Well, in the headquarters, well, we weren't, we used to go to headquarters, but we weren't part of it. We had our SAS, but what was task force headquarters like? Oh, hive of activity. They had umpteen briefing rooms. They had 3 briefings a day, some on which I did attend as a representative of the unit. They had a huge battle room which had umpteen maps with every kind of tactical location and thing marked on it. A bank of radio sets, and it was quite disturbing when you were there during a heavy contact, battalion against a company, company against a battalion, vice versa, and You get all the battle noises coming over and the casualties and the dead and everything, and you're there like in a sterile environment and you can't do anything, and it's quite unnerving. It's for me it was almost as with the hospital visits, with the casualties or when your mates got wounded. It was quite surreal because when you're doing it in the field, you're full of steam, you're full of your objective, you're full of your training, you're full of your survival instinct, you're always full of something, right? And it's just dog eat dog, and there seems to be a logic to it. However, once divorced from that and you're in this sort of sterile thing and you're like a spectator to a footy game where to miss a pass is to, lose your life, it was, I got quite a different perspective altogether. And they had the intelligence there, and then they had the operations there, and the air arm, which was responsible for placing all the airstrikes at any given time all over the joint, and that was a hairy job. And I often represented our unit to ensure that nothing was put on top of our fellas, and like there was from time to time. And I don't blame anyone. It was just a, roly-poly situation, and these things happen. 8% of casualties in any war minimum are caused by yourself, by your own. 8% minimum. Deaths, woundings, always caused by your own side. Always caused by your own side.
It's a dangerous game.
Dangerous game. It's not for the faint-hearted.
What was it actually like going back to Australia in between tours? Was it a relief to get home?
Right, okay. Unreal, because we knew that we were going back. And it was taken, you weren't really disengaged. I reckon from 1966 through till 71, I think, when I come home from a second tour, perhaps up till 72, you weren't really disengaged. Because all right, you come home to your family, and all right, you might be away from the location, but you're not away from the job. And you're getting briefed every day. And they're briefing you every day because you don't know when you're going to be on a plane back again. And you're training the new blokes. And so what I virtually did between tours is all I did was train the next batch of blokes. And I was away from home. I can't remember the time, but I was very seldom here. I would say that I would be, in the 12 months between the tours, I would have spent at least 8 not home, training the next lot of blokes intensely for the job. And I mean intensely. You had to impart everything to keep them alive. And the most gratifying thing I did, or the most gratifying thing I can recall, and is a young fella, because we used to keep off the tracks. We weren't in a position to be bold enough to use them because the tracks were their highways, right? So we used to teach a track, and we had a track crossing drill, where you put out your flankers and so on, or perhaps sometimes, depending on what assessment the patrol commander made, you just lined up and quickly got over where speed was more important, right? And there was this young fella, and I trained many, but there was one particular young fellow because I then rejoined his squadron up there. Actually not my own. I actually served for a short time with 3 Squadron. Anyhow, I kept, my phrase for teaching him was that when you step on a track, be prepared to kill your mother. I said, that's it. When you step on a track, you be prepared to kill your mother, right? I said, drum it into him, drum it into him, drum it into him. I said, because it happens so fast. And anyhow, I went up and joined 3 Squadron for a while. I knew my own squadron. When I say own, it's the squadron I did most with, but you don't own any squadron, you get posted to one. And he came up to me and he said to me, and I know his name and I could mention his name, but I'm not going to do it. He came up to me and he said, shook my hand, and he said, Paddy, I want to thank you very, very much. And I said, why's that? He said, first track we ever come to, first patrol, your words came to me. When you step on the track, be prepared to kill your mother. Pardon me. He said he got on the track, the Charlie put 2 rounds through his sleeve, and he dropped the man and got over the other side. So I think that was good training, don't you reckon?
Absolutely.
And he thanked me. I felt so great. I felt so great. That's it. He got on the track, the Charlie put 2 in his sleeve. That's getting close, isn't it?
Yeah.
But he got the upper hand and so on.
So going back for your second tour, were you actually looking forward to it, or?
No. And I hate to tell you, but I was getting ready for my third when they called the jam off. No, as a matter of fact, I was not unready, but really I never had a break. I come home, went on the Cadre courses and trained all these people and sort of got on the thing. Just outside the airport, and in those days the international was where the domestic was now, I halted the bus and I went behind a bush and I chucked up. And I guess it was nerves because, you know what's coming. And but once I did that, I was fine. It got rid of pre-match nerves, I suppose. And I actually enjoyed the flight, and I actually enjoyed landing at Thompson Ute, which I always like, and an exciting place. But yeah, no, that was it. Once you were there, it was like you never left. You just slipped back into it,
Had the base changed very much
Oh,
since
yeah.
you've been away?
Yeah, it had larger, it had gone larger, it had gone more sophisticated. There was a village which we started to relocate. First tour, I think, had been relocated within the jurisdiction of the not within the task force, but the one flank, which proved a disaster because all that happened is the Viet Cong moved in there and watched us, sort of thing. Didn't seem to work too well. Strip had been extended way out. Area had been cleaned, cleared, land cleared, whereas before the jungle came straight up more or less. Larger extent, they'd built a dam because before the water point was outside, and you actually had to have a platoon or a guard, and which I was one, on the water point, which was outside the bay every night, every single night, which was north of the task force heading towards Bimba. But by memory, we had to actually secure the water point each night. Now they built a dam inside there and storage. Chalk and cheese, really. I remember the Barrier turn-off, 67, bleak, World War II scene, Arvin soldiers padding past in their big Yankee helmets, landing there in 70, I think, second time. Oh, I think it was 70. People on motor scooters, Oi Da, the Vietnamese dress, laughing. It had gone, totally a different atmosphere. It, definitely gone different. But then it also turned again towards the end when the Viet Cong started to make that last sort of push affair. It started to turn a bit. But no, there was changes, visible, notable changes. Yeah.
What about your job within your second tour with intelligence? What would that actually encompass?
Okay. I did all facets of intelligence. Well, unofficially I ran my own net, which was often based on how many drinks you bought who and things like that, and who you snivelled up to, and how you could get yourself on a distribution list. And I managed to do quite a bit of that. And I was responsible for all infiltration and exfiltration of patrols. I used to give the pre-infill brief, like where were the enemy, where were your groups, so you didn't shoot them up or have an accidental shootout between friendlies. On your information, the Albatross lead would often plot the flight path or the tactics for the infill or the exfil, but generally all and every kind of intelligence that I could cram in and collect from all and every source. And then when a patrol went out, it was my job to brief them or to give them the data for their area, plus I think up to 2,000 or 3,000 metres beyond it. And once they had gone, had been infiltrated, which I also did, it was my job to go down to the air planning and to make sure that they were safe, that they weren't bombed and so on by accidentally. And I, out of the intelligence I gathered from every source and distributed, I gave all of the morning intelligence briefs and also updated our intelligence maps to the point of where marking in information on topographical information which wasn't marked on your maps but been brought in by the fellas, I would collate it all. So in the end we had a very up-to-date, so whenever we went to an operation in an area, they had the latest. Even though their map mightn't show it, I would draw it in for them, or they can draw it in themselves. They do very, like the intelligence I would get, I'd put a time limit on it, like 48 hours, maybe a bit longer. So the intelligence they had was timely. But I'd bring in earlier stuff if I needed. And it was a very heavy duty, and it was a 24-hour-a-day job. A 24-hour-a-day job. But it was very satisfying. And I patrolled too, but quite a few, and still had my shootouts as well. But
why did you choose to go back into patrolling?
Because you don't want to lose, what you had before. I didn't want to sort of become. I mean, I loved my intelligence job. It was great, and I really enjoyed it. And you'd have to ask the other fellas, but I'm sure they'd tell you I did a good job at it. Well, at least I hope so. But no way in the world was I losing, the reason I was there to begin with, which was to oppose the other fella. And so every opportunity, and sometimes I was sent. Sometimes I didn't have a choice. Sometimes I would be told that you're accompanying him. We're going here, you're doing that job. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But often when there was, and I knew when there was a slot because I used to program the whole damn thing. And my biggest coup was getting a coloured aerial photo of one particularly important landing zone, 2 hours old. And it cost me a crate of Bacardi. Crate of Bacardi. And with that, the pilot did the job. And when the boss saw it, he says, "My God, it's 2 hours old." Of course, the patrol commander was delirious with joy. Every blade of grass was seen. And I think the job went off well.
Excellent.
That intelligence side was just so marvellous. We're talking about real life. We're not talking theory or, making a movie. We're talking about... It got to the point where I could easily have put, well, I'd say $10, keep it down to $10. Got to the point, and I used to joke with my OC, and you don't joke about things like that, but I could put $10 on wherever that patrol was going to go hot, as we call it, get straight into action. That patrol would go hot or not in a certain time, and I'm happy to say I was seldom wrong. And if I did think that it would go hot, please believe me, I'd tell them straight out and say, for Christ's sake, full, everything full blast. Saves lives, saves lives.
Sure.
It was a wonderful job. I'll never forget it, And then, of course, I went into the intelligence side. No, I stayed in a regiment, but I was farmed out to intelligence organisations and had a reasonable career within a career on the intelligence side.
What sort of, I don't know what you call them, intelligence groups?
Well, I suppose it's been written, so I suppose I can tell you. But there's one called ASIS, Australian Secret Intelligence Service, and ASIA. ASIS is external, the equivalent of the UK MI6, and then you've got ASIA, which is internal security, and they got jurisdiction in this country only, which is equivalent to the British MI5. The CIA, who's got many arms, is equivalent to ASIS, and so on. They're written in the book, so I'm not breaking anything. And I can tell you I work with all of the intelligence agencies, but or liaise with them, or call it whatever you like. And but that's another thing. That's another facet of the whole industry or the game or whatever. But getting back to the intelligence in Vietnam, yes, you had to be clever. I mean, you could go through the motions, you could just, you were getting the same pay, if you could live with your conscience, not supply your blokes with what they deserved, or you could really put in the hard yards and come up with the top shelf stuff. And where possible, I come up with the top. Well, I like to think I come up with the top shelf. I used to push my counterparts down the task force and the divisional intelligence, make a nuisance of myself, push them all the time. Nothing was good enough for any patrol, wherever I was on it or not. I got the best we could,
Would you say that your second tour was more enjoyable for you then than your first?
I just call them both parallel, except perhaps I went, in my opinion, one notch more on the second, you know, just that one notch more. Because whereas in the first I did all these jobs without really having the intimate detail, at least on the second one, not only did I know the intimate detail behind the other jobs, but also the ones I went on, which was absolutely terrific, which gives you the full picture.
And how old were you actually by the time you went into your second tour?
I had my 30th birthday, second tour, I'm sure about it. Yeah, I had my 30th birthday up there. Considering I went into the military age 17, it's starting to become a long haul, isn't it? And even then, funny enough, when I came back again from that second tour, we went back into training the blokes again, because we didn't know when the thing was going to end, or when we had to deploy. So I would say I was more or less at it from 66 to 72, non-stop, at least mentally. So that, I think, is a relatively long haul. Don't you reckon?
Oh, it's absolutely long haul to be under that sort of pressure. And then, of course, we were still getting prepared, but, you know, as you say, they pulled everyone out in 72. And we were... I know that we were training for our third time. And some of the blokes did do 3, but they did a couple with us and then went on a training team, or went with a training team first. I was quite happy to have gone on a training team. I did apply. No worries at all. I would have enjoyed that. However, I'm really happy that I did the 2 tours with SAS, because it kind of completed the whole thing. If I'd have gone, say, no, not that it was incomplete, but had I gone one tour with SAS once, I would have loved it. It was not a problem. But I'm just, what I would have really liked, I mean, you know, I don't know if you like these things, but perhaps, you know, have finished it off with SAS and then perhaps done a training team. But no, it was all starting to get a bit much. It was all starting to get a bit much, as far from what I could see. Not the job. I was still keen on the job. I still believed in the job. That's not, but physically, mentally, on your home life, it was starting to stretch out. The old rubber band was stretching a long way. Sure. What did you think about America pulling out of Vietnam?
I was absolutely bloody shocked. I couldn't believe it. Like, to me it seemed like around the 4th quarter you take your ball and you go home without completing the game. Yes, we were starting towards the end of the second tour, there were signs and symptoms that the pressure was going back on. 33 NBA and all these people who used to loiter around, that's division, their division, was starting to get closer and closer to the province.
The infrastructure, which we, in my opinion, and my intelligence opinion then, not as my other opinion, we delayed too long in arresting. We should have arrested them much earlier, because when we did, some of the writing was on the wall, not in our province, but in some of the northern provinces. And of course the local Vietnamese judges were then very loath to convict these infrastructure people. When I say we, I mean as a task force team, you know. These were classified things then. I have to assume they're declassified now. But we left our run too late in arresting at least our set of Viet Cong infrastructure, the hierarchy of the province and the intelligence arm, and putting them before the Vietnamese judges for, decision, wherever they be shot or flaming, whatever. And the Vietnamese judges were very loath, because they could see their comrades coming over the hill, if not in our province. Although, as I say, towards the end of the second tour, some of the pressure was starting to go on a bit, akin to, no, not too much. We were never beaten. Sometimes I think about Vietnam, that we'd won the thing many times over, except we didn't know. I have that feeling that we'd actually, because to really win it, you have to win it politically. And we could only so much we could do in the field. Well, at least I can't speak for every province, and I can't speak for every engagement and every action. And perhaps we were in 3 Corps, and perhaps in I Corps they were feeling the pinch more. Or down below in 4 Corps they might have been feeling the pinch more. But I couldn't help but get the feeling that we, militarily at least, we had neutralised the place and perhaps even won the situation. But because the political thing wasn't sorted out, it was unwinnable more than anything else. I think in the end they signed a peace treaty in Paris, and that was the end of it anyhow. So whatever you talk about, I mean, I hope to God that they've learned their lessons in the future, but I doubt it very much. I really.
What sort of a response did you get back, or did you get when you came back to Australia about being in Vietnam?
Not good. As a matter of fact, there was a great thing about not even talking about it. For the first time in the second tour, I got R&R home, ever. A big mistake. I really don't believe that you should be allowed to come home. It sounds fine, it sounds great, but when you go back after actually coming back to the unreality, you say the reality of home, but the unreal, because by that time what went on there was real and this was unreal. And I mean, when you land back in your defence position after being home, seeing your wife, seeing your kids, 5 days only, I don't know how the other blokes reacted to it, but it sort of took the momentum or the wind out of your sail. If I, like my son, if they go into a situation like that, I've got 3 sons. Tomorrow, I would say, for Christ's sake, don't come home. Go anywhere. Go to Hong Kong, get pissed, play up with the women, do whatever you like. But for Christ's sake, because you go back and you just can't. You can't. And the minute the fire in the belly dies remotely, you're up for getting that third eye, in my opinion. And a bad mistake. And I was sitting in my lounge room and had the next door neighbours there, and she called me a killer, the next door neighbour. You know, my wife Chris can testify to all of that. It was a very bad atmosphere. I never got pelted with tomatoes, but some of the blokes definitely did. We used to sneak into the airports not like chest out, although we carried ourselves that way, but it used to be, you know, low key and almost like trying to hide you away. I mean, there you are fighting for your country, upholding the pride of your nation, and when you come back from doing exactly that, what do? Try and sneak you in the back door. I mean, you know, no, it was a very bad atmosphere. I was full uniform with my ribbons on. I wasn't allowed into an RSL at all. I was stopped by the bouncer at the door. And I said to him, pardon me, I said, listen, all these civvies are going past into the club and they're home in full uniform. I'm transiting from R&R in Perth back to Newey Dad, and you're not allowing me to come in for a drink. He says, sorry, mate, I'd like you to, but it's my instruction from the president of the RSL. So I said, okay, can I please speak to the president of the RSL? So the president came out, outside, wouldn't even go inside the doorway. This is in the Sydney RSL. I said the same thing. I said, look at me. I said, I just come from a war zone. I'm going back to a war zone. I said, I just saw my family in Perth. I'm transiting. I'm in a camp. I just popped down here for a drink. And there's your bouncer, your gorilla on the door not letting me in. Yeah, he says, you Vietnam veterans are a bundle of trouble. You all just, want to cause trouble, anything. He said, that's my instructions, And I don't want to tell in front of the camera what I told him, and piss weak, bloody idiot. I mean, can you imagine how I felt? And anyhow, I said, I'll go and get, stuffed and all of that. And I was pretty aggro. And I suppose I was only playing up to what he was saying about us Vietnam veterans getting angry and all of that, right? Anyhow, he stormed off inside. And the bouncer says, hey, come here. I walked over and he said, listen, mate, he said, your mate's not here. He said, they're around the corner at this such and such a pub. He said, just go. Anyhow, I forget the name of the pub. I went in, walked in. Oh, it was like a Newey Dad job. All the vets were there getting drunk and I was home again, sort of. This is how it was. Now, isn't that a bit of a disgrace?
Oh, it's completely.
Yeah.
Do you hold any resentment towards the RSL because of that experience?
Yes, I do. And I was a member of the RSL from, I first joined in 61, I think, and I dropped my membership, and I didn't rejoin until, let's say 1990 perhaps, or 1990 perhaps, or something like that. So from, let's say, at least a good 10, 15 years, I refused to become a member. And now they're all snivelling to us to try and get membership. What are you laughing? I mean, no, I don't care. I will say that to anyone, I'll say it on the bloody TV if I have to. Oh, sure, it's a well-known, they've now punched everything in computers. And one of the things that comes up, there was 14 war times, and you shouldn't compare a war in action, that's all garbage. When you're getting shot at, you're getting shot at, even if you're a cop on the street. But there was 40 times more serious wounds or something there, and 250 times more combat stress. Now, wherever the computer's right or wrong, I haven't got a clue, but what the impression I got at the time from the RSL was that we weren't in a war, that it was just some Asiatic melee or whatever, not melee, the massacre, and this is the impression I got, and particularly in Sydney with all the pokies and everything, it seemed to be more a cabaret set rather than, salute the flag and uphold the honour of your fighting men. But that's my opinion. But I did rejoin, and I don't mind them, but I've still got that reservation in the back of the mind.
Does that sort of reservation make you blokes a tighter group?
I think I'm not the only one that's had this experience, far from it, and I think it does. And I think it's sad, and particularly now, but not so much now in a way, because a lot of the Vietnam vets say, and I like to think I got more active service than just the Vietnam one. I like to think I've got a broad spectrum of active service, but although our men are starting to get into prominent positions, that reservation about the ultimate motive of the RSL as a quasi-political body is hard to shake out of your head. And that's wrong. It shouldn't be there. One for all for one. It's very hard to shake out. Yes, that was a very bad experience. I mean, can you imagine it? A man in uniform coming and going from a combat zone, not allowed to go and drink in an RSL. Have you ever heard of a thing like that?
Well, I can't imagine how completely and totally shocked and disappointed and
Absolutely. Angry. And especially when the bouncer directed me, and there were all the boys, you know, in my position and that, and they were having a gay old party, and we're all boarding planes here, there, and everywhere, and like a little. Now you know where the Vietnam Veterans Association started. Probably in those pubs, you know, rebounded off the non-attendance at the RSL.
Sure.
True story. I'm not in. I've downplayed it. I've not embellished it. I've downplayed it. And I'm not anti-RSL or whatever. I'm a member. I'm renewed my membership. You know, as I say, I renewed it in 90 or something like that and haven't missed since. And I'm a proud member of the Margaret River RSL, a good group of blokes.
What did you actually do when you came back from Vietnam? Were you still in the military?
Oh yes, I stayed in the military till 81. And I went into the unconventional warfare wing side, which is the three interrelated fields of guerrilla warfare, organising, escape and invasion, and psychological operations.
And was this part of intelligence?
No, not quite. It is a sort of a military tasking on its own. But of course, intelligence always plays a big part in all of these things. I mean, how can you do guerrilla warfare and you know, without having the intelligence picture on hand, or psychological operations? I mean, you know, who's your target audience? Where are you going? And yes, well, how about if I say it went hand in glove? Went hand in glove. But I also started to go rise in rank, and then I started to get administrative responsibilities, sergeant major, squadron sergeant major responsibilities, where all of a sudden, irrespective of your qualification or bent or whatever, all of a sudden you're looking after 100 blokes, the welfare of 100 men, the operational welfare on occasions of 100 men, the training, drill, dress, discipline, call it whatever you like, and huge responsibility. It's one you can't shirk, one you shouldn't shirk, and one you've got to do to the utmost ability. You know, and once again, their lives, even in drills, even the way you prepared them to approach even parachute training, say, and sort of, you know, and it's very important. Can't stress it. Can't stress it.
Did you enjoy that time?
Oh yes, very much so. Very much so. I only really left the military to go into business. It was a hard choice. I had some wonderful positions offered, and I was also intending to go for a commission that had started and was offered it and started to sort of go that way, but and other things. And but no, I decided that a civilian business was the way to go. And no regrets, absolutely no regrets. But you know, 57 to 81, it's a long haul. Great bundle of memories. A lot of activity went into that. A hell of a lot. A hell of a lot.
You mentioned earlier in the kitchen, I just thought I'd pop this one in as one of the final questions. The health of Vietnam veterans doesn't seem to be particularly good, and you had some theories as to why your health is not so flash. If you could share that with us.
Well, in my opinion, and you really have to battle. Once again, I'm getting to your question. I'm proud of the way that I have handled mine, and believe me, I have my share. That's not what the program's about. But if the blokes are not prepared to really battle for their health like they battle for anything else, then they will go down, and they are going down like flies. From what I can work out, Vietnam vets are now dying, give or take, around the age of 55, which is too young. Now, I put it down to this, basically. The dapsone and the paladrin that we had to take, some of the gear we experimented with. Like, for instance, 1 minute we would put on a certain type of camouflage cream made by Elizabeth Arden. All the big, ladies, people got in on the act, and next minute there was a panic signal coming around. Quickly, get it off, wash it off, whatever, because it's going to make your face drop off, or you're going to get cancer from it. But I mean, proven medical thing. Same with dapsone. Dapsone, some people just can't take dapsone in any shape. Some died from taking it. and it was a whisper, and I, going down to the task force briefs, I actually saw the board of the battle and non-battle casualties of, and some men did die from taking dapsone. At least that's what was written up there, and so on. And then defoliation, like first trip, we're in the mess queue, and C-130 come over, dropped the old DDT type stuff over it. As I say, we're all in the mess queue. Reaction was, because you don't know too much about these things, you beauty, there's no flies for a week. I remember saying, no flies for a week or so, I'll go over to the garbage can, you know, brand new garbage can full of hot water where you dip your Dixies to sterilise them. But as I dipped them, I noticed that the powdery type stuff was falling into that as well. And then I noticed falling into the food as well, okay, which the cooks had prepared, and, you know, and it drifted into the hut we used as a mess hall. But, and still nothing, not a big deal. Then I recalled the first patrol in a defoliated area. And the thing that the reason I do remember it is because just before, well, on last light, when everything was, and we were wrong. On last light, after our own stand to, and you managed to get your head down, I noticed that this white stuff was rising and falling towards my nostrils, which was around the place, because the thing, as you're breathing in and out. Now, okay, it may have, logically, the body is still not as yet, will be in umpteen generations, used to a huge intake of chemicals. It takes time for the body to evolve. And we, of course, for the want of a better word, had World War II bodies, and we were starting to be exposed to World War III things, and a reaction of some sort occurs. And not only that, but the fogger would come around, and everybody knows, you know, to fog out your tents. And everybody knows that the fogger was also used with Agent Orange, or Christ knows what, to defoliate 1 minute, next minute DDT or something to get rid of the mosquitoes in you. And of course they always did it when, often when the blokes were in camp, and you'd be fogged out. Wherever this is true or not, I don't have a clue, but there's got to be some common denominator, because there's a common denominator in certain illnesses across the board. So I think it has, in essence, to do. Plus, what about the preservatives? I remember one particular thing that the old cook was doing, because I think we had some rations from the Korean War. We were actually eating some of the rations from the Korean War.
Not very pleasant.
Well, it's, I think it might have been. Look, I can't remember what it was, but there's that for sure, positively, without a doubt. I mean, I'm not going that Alzheimer's that I can't recall what I read. I was quite surprised. I mean, you only remember the things that surprise you. I mean, the normal thing. So all in all, add the whole thing up. Add up the. Well, in our cases, or goodness knows what case, the adrenaline stress or whatever, and I don't know, some reaction has to occur. The law of averages demands it. Otherwise, why are the blokes dying so young? I've got a sheet of paper up there which tells you how many died last year, and you get a bloody shock if you read it.
It's certainly one of the negative effects of Vietnam, but do you have any positive sort of an effect from Vietnam?
Absolutely. I mean, no, I wouldn't have missed it for quids. It was a life's experience. I mean, you know, if you were to ask me what is the greatest experience of my life, I mean, not the most pleasant, but the greatest. I mean, I hope, you know, Chris would probably say that, our marriage or something like that. But look, I'm very sorry, but Vietnam, the two tours were by far the thing that I'll live with to the day I die. I'm not sorry I went. I mean, would I do it tomorrow if I was young as that? Probably. But no, it was an unbelievable time in our period of history, world history. It was an unbelievable opportunity to contribute. I was an anti-communist in the worst possible way. They were communists. They wanted to bring about a regime which I didn't want to have a bar of. I love my country. That's it. Into it. No questions asked.
Paddy, thank you so much for talking to us today. It's been a wonderful experience through your life and a really, really fabulous day for us. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.